focused on business. Presumptive President-elect Joe Biden discusses how his administration would help the economy. Coronavirus crisis, new developments, and a glimmer of hope in the race to find a vaccine for COVID-19. Fighting for the unborn, an update on the annual March for Life and how it will be affected by the pandemic. And he will wait for us. Pope Francis has good news on God and how he deals with sinners. On EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Tracy Sable. The White House criticizes Democratic leaders who violate their own strict lockdown measures, yet continue to crack down on church attendance. This comes as President Donald Trump plans his own big rally in Georgia to fight for the GOP. Meanwhile, presumptive President-elect Joe Biden listens to the pain suffered by small businesses during the pandemic. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reports. Owen?
Tracy, good evening to you. We begin tonight with Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, who said today that Christmas will absolutely be celebrated today here at the White House.
If you can loot businesses, burn down buildings, engage in protest, you can also go to a Christmas party.
White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany says Christmas and Hanukkah at the White House will go on. She also applauded the ruling by the Supreme Court that barred New York from enforcing certain restrictions on religious services in areas designated as coronavirus hot zones.
While the pandemic poses many grave challenges, there is no world in which the Constitution tolerates color-coded executive edicts that reopen liquor stores and bike shops, but shutter churches, synagogues, and mosques.
Meanwhile, President Donald Trump will soon surround himself with another big crowd. He tweeted, "We'll be going to Georgia for a big Trump rally in support of our two great Republican senators, David and Kelly." The president also tweeted that he'll veto a defense bill unless it ends the program that protects internet companies from getting sued for the things people post.
Certainly odd that big social media companies seem to be censoring conservative points of view, and we don't like that one bit.
And today, presumptive President-elect Joe Biden spoke with small businesses hurting badly.
I don't think about the gross domestic product or the state of the stock market. I think about families like yours, family like mine.
There are still a lot of small businesses, especially in the restaurant, entertainment, travel industry, that are really suffering right now.
Brad Close advocates for small businesses. He says for some, the clock is ticking to financial disaster.
When you look across your community, you'll see that it's the local small businesses that are sponsoring the little leagues, the high school marching band, all the clubs. They're there for the community activities, but they operate on very small margins.
Also tonight, on a separate note, the White House announced today that legendary Notre Dame football coach Lou Holtz will be awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, calling him a true American patriot, saying that he inspired generations of young athletes. Great story there. Tracy?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Owen. White House correspondent Owen Jensen reporting for us tonight. Well, tonight, as Americans suffer under pressure from the coronavirus, time is running out for U.S. lawmakers to pass more COVID-19 aid. As the gridlock continues, small business owners, like those meeting with the presumptive president-elect today, are urging lawmakers to reach an agreement. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more, as leaders on both sides of the aisle say they want action and they want it soon. Eric?
That's what they're saying, Tracy. You know, leadership on both parties say that they understand that this coronavirus pandemic has hit all Americans hard, but for the small business owners in particular who have had to deal with shutdowns and also restrictions, they've been hit especially hard. And I did speak to a number of them today who say that it's time for politicians to put aside their differences and work on a deal.
It shouldn't be about a party or anything like that.
John Pan manages the John Crouch Tobacco Shop in Old Town Alexandria, just across the Potomac River from the U.S. Capitol. He tells me they've kept their doors open during the pandemic thanks to aid from the Small Business Paycheck Protection Program.
What I'd like to see is the federal government step in and try and help every business owner, small business owners especially, making it simpler to get the money that they have available for us, because trying to apply for that right now is a nightmare.
Other businesses like restaurants are trying to entice customers with heated outdoor tents for outdoor dining. But with more COVID cases on the rise, even that option may go away. In the House, the majority leader says he wants a relief bill passed by next Thursday, December 10th.
I've talked to Senator McConnell. He believes we need to do something before we leave. I believe we ought to do something before we leave. The Speaker believes that. Schumer believes it. Mnuchin believes it.
But the parties have yet to agree on what this next round of COVID funding should cover. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says Republicans have a plan with support from some Democrats and the White House.
The president will sign the McConnell proposal that he put forward yesterday, and we look forward to making progress on that.
And John Pan tells me
They should be working together, not for one side or the other. This is America, and America should always step up for America.
right now the GOP proposal backed by Leader McConnell does not include another round of direct payments. Now, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin did say that that is something that lawmakers could consider down the road. Tracy?
Correspondent Eric Rosales reporting from Capitol Hill tonight. Thank you so much, Eric. The United Kingdom is the first Western nation to approve a coronavirus vaccine. Now, under an emergency use authorization, the country is set to deploy the Pfizer vaccine next week as the UK plans to implement its biggest immunization program in decades. Correspondent Mark Irons reports. Mark?
Tracy, the top priority will be given to those most at risk of dying from COVID-19, elderly people in nursing homes, and frontline healthcare workers. The UK's health secretary says 800,000 vaccine doses will be available next week, with millions more coming in following weeks.
This will be one of the biggest civilian logistical efforts that we've faced as a nation. It will be difficult. There will be challenges and complications, but I know that the NHS is equal to the task. Rolling out the vaccine, free at the point of delivery, according to clinical need, not ability to pay, is in the finest tradition of our National Health Service.
British regulators insist no corners have been cut during the Pfizer vaccine review process. The CEO of BioNTech, Pfizer's German partner, said this vaccine news marks the start of the end of the pandemic. Here in the U.S., the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are awaiting emergency use approval from the FDA. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention is recommending healthcare workers and nursing home residents be the first to receive a vaccine. The CDC has also announced recommendations for quarantines, in some cases offering a shortened quarantine of 7 to 10 days after exposure. And a reminder, the National Catholic Bioethics Center has identified the Pfizer vaccine as one of the least ethically problematic vaccines. It did not rely on aborted fetal cell lines during production. Tracy?
Correspondent Mark Irons, thanks so much for that report, Mark. Well, the European Union has released its recommendations for keeping the Christmas season safe during the coronavirus pandemic. Europe's famous Christmas markets that usually bring in hundreds of tourists, like this one in Germany, are set to be closed over fears of social distancing. Other suggested restrictions include travel and being attentive to mental health support, especially toward the elderly. EWTN Newsroom correspondent Colin Flynn joins us now. Colin, so good to see you. So tell us, overall, what do the COVID recommendations say for the European countries during Christmas?
Good evening, Tracy. Well, this 14-page document is a guide to European countries from the European Commission as to what the best restrictions and measures should be to restrict the spread of COVID-19 across Europe over the holiday season. And this, of course, is coming at a time when people are normally travelling more than usual. They're visiting family and friends, attending the traditional work parties, Christmas carols, services, and so on and so forth. Now, before they recommended the different measures that should be implemented, the document outlines the COVID situation across Europe at the moment. It gives an overview, and it says that every 17 seconds, a person dies from COVID-19 within the European Union. And this document starts by urging countries within the Union not to undo or reverse the great work that they have done by implementing lockdowns and restrictions over the past couple of months. They don't want them to undo all that work by loosening the restrictions over the holiday season. The document goes on to say that those very restrictions, those measures that have been implemented, are the best tool that countries have in the fight against COVID-19. And of course, I'm talking about measures like social distancing, working remotely, the mandatory wearing of masks, increased testing, and so on.
Colin, what about religious services? What did the EU have to say about those?
Yes, well, Tracy, when talking about religious services, the EU has warned that the transmission of the virus and the speed of its spread could be greatly increased by what it called cultural traditions, such as end-of-year festivities and religious services taking place. It warned that these could be what they call super spreader events. Now, in terms of masses and religious services, it has a few recommendations to governments. But remember, Tracy, these are just recommendations. It's up to each individual member nation within the EU to come up with their own rules within their territories. But some of the recommendations: to avoid having large services. But when there are services within churches, that close families would have a designated spot within the church that would be cornered off and just kind of for themselves. Also, it recommends to ban communal singing across the board, and that TV, radio and online should be used as an alternative to people attending these services in person. Now, we read the document today in full, Tracy, and at no point does it recommend stopping religious services or banning people from attending them outright. It does say in another part, though, however, that mass gatherings should be completely banned. But what the definition of a mass gathering is, again, that will be up to each individual member nation in the European Union to decide that.
Colin, we have about a minute left, but I'm curious, how are church leaders responding to this?
Well, Tracy, there is a mixed reaction and there's mixed debate among the faithful as to what Christmas will be like this year and how public masses should or should not be. For example, in Belgium, bishops are calling for dialogue with the government, and the government there in Belgium have announced that all religious ceremonies will be suspended until January the 15th. The bishops are saying that this is limiting the experience of their faith. In my home country, Ireland, yesterday in the country's largest newspaper, the Irish Times, one priest was calling for the Irish bishops to announce that all masses across Christmas would be held online. They say that is the safest way. In the United Kingdom, Bishop John Arnold, he is at the Diocese of Salford, he has suggested that people attend one mass between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, and his reasoning for that was that so the priests and the church volunteers would not be overworked in sanitizing the churches. In France, there's an ongoing fight between the bishops and the government. They are fighting for the 30-person limit to be increased over the Christmas period. In Spain, it looks like churches will remain open and masses will be allowed to be attended by the public. However, singing will be banned. And here in Italy, churches will remain open. People can still attend Mass. However, the 10 p.m. curfew is likely to remain in place nationwide over the Christmas period, which means that the traditional midnight Mass is likely not to go ahead here this year.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Colin Flynn, EWTN Newsroom correspondent. Always appreciate your time, Colin. Thanks again.
Tracy, thank you very much.
Coming up, Hong Kong gives prison sentences to pro-democracy advocates. And new developments in China's role in the origins of the coronavirus. Welcome back. The parliament in Israel moves closer to holding new elections.
קריאה טרומית על הצעת חוק התפזרות הכנסת ה-23.
Today's vote is the first step to holding the fourth national election in less than 2 years. The government coalition formed by Benjamin Netanyahu and Benny Gantz just 7 months ago is in danger of collapsing. In Hong Kong, a court sentences a pro-democracy advocate to more than 1 year in prison. Joshua Wong received a 13-and-a-half-month sentence. 2 others were sentenced to several months in jail for organizing protests in the former British territory last year. China has been tightening control on Hong Kong after months of demonstrations. 24-year-old Wong has been jailed before for participating in the protests. Joining me now on Skype to talk more about today's sentencings and their implications is Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China. Gordon, welcome back. Always great to have you on the show. First off, I want to get your reaction to today's news out of Hong Kong. What message do you think this sends to those considering criticizing the Chinese government?
Well, Beijing is just trying to silence all opposition, all dissent, all expressions of discontent And in addition to the sentencing of Joshua Wong and the two others, they also charged Jimmy Lai, the publisher of Apple Daily, which is the opposition newspaper. And that also was another step towards coercing Hong Kong into silence.
Gordon, what else do we know about the charges against Lai and what may be next?
Well, this is absolutely fascinating, Tracy, because in August, he was actually apprehended on suspicion of violating the national security law, which was imposed by Beijing at the end of June, which is draconian. But what they did was they charged Lai just a few days ago, not with NSL violations, but with a fraud violation, which stems from misuse of the lease of Apple Daily. And so I think what they're trying to do is to tar Jimmy's reputation. And I think they're also afraid of charging him under the national security law, because I think they would be concerned about the blowback in Hong Kong society.
What do you think this all says about the current condition and also the future of Hong Kong's autonomy?
Yeah, right now, there is no autonomy in Hong Kong. The national security law was correctly described as the end of law in Hong Kong. So Beijing is directly ruling the territory. Now, that doesn't mean that opposition is ended, because what we have seen, especially over the last month or so, are people in Hong Kong are regaining their footing. They're starting to express discontent, and they're making life miserable for Beijing. And so this is a long-term struggle between the Chinese and the people of Hong Kong. This is really an insurgency. And as we know, insurgencies can melt away at times, but they usually come back. And I think what we're going to see is the people in Hong Kong will once again take to the streets.
Gordon, I want to switch gears just a little bit here. I know that you've also been following reports that the Chinese government may have withheld information related to the COVID-19 outbreak. Are you surprised by these reports? And also, what are we learning from these reports?
Yeah, what is really surprising is that someone took 117 documents from the Hubei Center for Disease Control and Prevention and actually just gave them to a foreigner, in this case, a news organization. And this is an example of, the Communist Party has went to extraordinary lengths to control the narrative about the coronavirus. But the Chinese people are courageous, and they are really struggling to get the truth out. This started in December with the Wuhan 8, those 8 doctors. And there has been a number of instances where Chinese people have actually spoken to the world at grave risk to themselves.
Well, Gordon, thank you so much for coming on. We always appreciate your insight. Gordon Chang, author of The Coming Collapse of China. Thanks again.
Thanks, Tracy.
Up next, analysis of how the coronavirus crisis may affect the March for Life. And Pope Francis tells us about the power of prayer. Colorado's Attorney General says 9 additional priests in the state were found to have sexually abused children going back to the 1950s. 6 of the newly named priests are dead, while others were previously removed from the priesthood or retired. Catholic officials say they are brokenhearted over what the survivors had to endure, and they apologized for the past failures of the church. The new head of the Diocese of Buffalo, New York, is promising to promote transparency. Bishop Michael Fisher will be installed next month. Buffalo has been rocked by recent revelations of clergy sex abuse, but Bishop Fisher says that he will work with local Catholics in order to strengthen the community and the church. Turning now to the challenges presented by a potential Joe Biden presidency for leaders within the Catholic Church on the subject of abortion. Catherine Hedrow, host and managing editor of EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, joins me now. Catherine, so good to see you. Always great to be with you. I know that you're looking at this topic this week on your show. The U.S. bishops elected Archbishop William Lori to the next pro-life chair. His term will overlap what appears to be a likely Biden presidency. I know you spoke with Archbishop Lori today. What did he have to say?
That's right, Tracy. Archbishop Lori will take on his role as USCCB Pro-Life Chair next November, and it's a term that lasts for 3 years, so it will overlap with a Biden-Harris presidency. I spoke with Archbishop Lori today for an interview to air tomorrow evening on EWTN Pro-Life Weekly, and he told me it's important to him to maintain open lines of communication with the incoming administration, to dialogue and to engage, but also, Tracy, to recognize where there are areas of disagreement. And obviously, that biggest area of disagreement is going to be the abortion issue. Archbishop Lori also clearly reiterated throughout our interview why abortion is the preeminent priority for the U.S. bishops and for the Catholic Church. So it's a little preview into what that relationship with the White House might look like.
Yeah, looking forward to your interview. I want to turn to other pro-life news right now. What can you tell us about a new initiative from the group 40 Days for Life?
Yes, well, a lot of our viewers will be familiar with 40 Days for Life. That's the pro-life group that hosts prayer vigils outside of abortion facilities to pray and fast for an end to abortion. And now the group's president and CEO, Chang tells me 40 Days for Life is going 365. They are now launching a year-round initiative. It'll begin in 2021. It's not going to replace the 40-day campaigns. It's going to add to them. And it's not going to be at every single location. It's really mainly going to be for their robust, successful locations. Chang also told me, Tracy, that devastatingly, he's seen in the year of 2020 an uptick in the number of abortions. As he put it, when fear goes up, abortions go up. We know there's been a lot of that fear this year, which really speaks to the importance of having that pro-life presence outside of abortion facilities.
Yeah. Well, Catherine, I know that we are less than 2 months away now from the 2021 March for Life. I know you know that. How do you anticipate the coronavirus to impact this major pro-life demonstration?
The March for Life will go on. That is what I continue to hear from organizers, and we here at EWTN News will obviously be continuing to cover as we do every single year. But organizers really are reiterating that every group and every family will have to discern and decide for themselves if they can, for their health, take the trip out to Washington, D.C. And listen, the events surrounding the March for Life certainly are going to look different next month. For example, the Archdiocese of Washington typically hosts this massive youth rally and Mass for Life in Capital One Arena. The arena is packed with young people. That event is now going to be virtual. The March for Life has also canceled their March for Life Expo Day. But Tracy, I'll tell you, I am still anticipating a lot of pro-lifers to make the trip out to Washington, D.C. for the March for Life. It's happening the week after the presidential inauguration. And with it looking more and more likely it will be Biden inaugurated, I think that's really going to engage the grassroots pro-life movement, who will want to come out and speak out against a Biden-Harris extreme abortion agenda.
Yeah, Catherine, I agree with you right there. And you know what? Some changes to this year's event, but still a lot of enthusiasm behind it.
Absolutely, that's right. We all can. And no matter where you're at, you can pray for the culture of life and pray to uphold life.
Absolutely. Catherine, thank you so much for your time. Always appreciate having you on. And a reminder that you can watch EWTN Pro-Life Weekly Thursdays at 10 p.m. For other airing times, just go to our website, EWTN.com. Pope Francis reminds the faithful of the power of prayer.
Oración es la llave para que podamos entrar en un diálogo.
In his prayer attention for the month of December, the Holy Father encourages the faithful to have conversations with our Lord and also to spend quiet time to listen to him. Pope Francis adds that every heart can be changed through prayer. And finally tonight, Pope Francis also has a message of hope. He says God loves us despite our sins.
Per Dio siamo più importanti noi che tutti I peccati che noi possiamo fare.
At his weekly talk in the Vatican, the Holy Father says God does not wait for us to stop sinning to love us. He also waits until the very last instant in the hope that hard-hearted will have a conversion. Pope Francis adds that there is no sin that can erase the love and the image of Christ that we all carry. We thank you for watching tonight. For the entire EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Tracy Sable. Good night and God bless.